an interesting side route on my way to fourth edition. I discovered again. Sometimes I just keep popping back to Green Ronin. I don't really know why. And I picked up again. I don't know what it is with me in games of the noughties, the sort of 2000s.
Right.
I just for some reason I don't know why they're called to me. I don't know they do. I picked up True 20. Now, True 20 is an interesting one because for me it was my RuneQuest D&D because it's an inventive play with I think about the 3.5 SRD. So they've taken the sort of guts of what is a D20 conceit. You go up in levels 1 to 20 because it's True 20, but they've taken the bloat out. So what they've done is they've just given a sort of like a toughness mechanic.
Right.
And your toughness mechanic, at least in the core game, does not vary by level.
Right.
So yeah, you can parry the hell out of things, just exactly as you say.
Right.
You've got your defense goes up or whatever it is.
You're better at protecting your tender flesh, but your flesh remains tender.
Right. Oh yeah, and that critical toughness save against the damage that's coming in, you mess it up. Well, you mess it up, you're still mortal. Right. And so that was a very interesting game on the way in. I thought, well, hang on, that's interesting. They kind of blended for me, the sort of danger elements of it, and that slight uncertainty and the unpredictability of the D20.
That is one of the odd things about D&D 4th edition to me. There is no mention of death in any practical way concerning play. Not in any of my books, not in any of the rules that I have. It does not talk about death, character death, as a really significant feature of play. And since I think people have been a little lucky in my games, and also I misplay bad guys and villains and monsters when I get tired. So, which frustrates me because I'm like, damn it, I was trying to kill you. I really was, I was just bad at it. But the point being that I know statistically it could well have happened. It just hasn't happened too much. But the game is sometimes noted as being more lethal than 3rd edition or Pathfinder or whatever. And I think that's true. But still, I mean, I'm not, again, I can't say how that scales up through the levels or whatever. But my feeling is that I look at the 4th edition D&D book and I recognize a couple of things. First of all, they never talk about people being different levels, characters being different levels in a party. They are very little. It's the idea is mainly everyone's going to live and everybody's going to level up together is pretty much the presumption. And that I find kind of interesting because I like the capacity of 4th edition uniquely in my experience for all versions of D&D. The capacity for player proactivity, which is to say what characters want. If you understand the quest rules in particular and how they actually knock down the leveling up requirements, right? You're actually knocking down the number of violent encounters you need to level up simply because your characters want to do things.
Yep.
How what a gift for everybody, right? What a gift for everyone. Everyone at the table benefits from this. Have your characters want things, you'll level up with, less of blows to you, and that means less random shit, right? You actually have encounters that matter. And you're pursuing your quest, right? So you're going places that are about it. And so I'm not talking about a quest like a module that the game master's holding up. I'm talking about something that's emerged from what the characters want to do and from the existing things that we've got. I think this is wonderful. To add the risk of the real death in there, and I'm not necessarily talking about 1st edition, death saves left and right. I'm talking about the consequential death from consequential play. RuneQuest style, basically. If you have that in there, to me, that's only better, right? That can only be better. So that I'm kind of looking at it and saying, what would I do? What do the rules give me that make it possible for players to lose characters, to keep playing? There's lots and lots of systems out there that permit this in ways that aren't stupid. Well, maybe not lots and lots, but I know of several in which a character dying is not too bad, you're out for the player.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean that a clone steps out from behind the tree and joins the party, right?
Yeah, brother.
Yeah, exactly. Or what is it? It's kind of like, can I have this corpse's armor? Yeah, it looks like it fits you fine.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about this in our group actually a little bit recently, and I haven't picked up so much, and I intend to change on the sort of quest idea, and it's almost like it's like goal orientated advancement. So you're kind of, I'm not saying it's MMO because I'm going back to the arguments of a decade ago, but you can almost upfront it, which is say, do you want to do this, or this? This is, and then they've all got sort of like sort of tasty rewards, advancement rewards, depending on how you want to progress it. Of course, you can do it retrospectively.
You can play it.
So,
Yeah, you could even do it retrospectively and say, hey, everybody, I looked over this last session we just played, and I heard you say we better go kill that guy.
Yeah,
I heard you say that, and now between sessions, I said, dude, we have a quest.
Exactly.
We have a quest, and so and that's perfectly easy to do. And then another thing that's easy to do is a mode of preparation, which I've been writing about for a while, particularly for games which either have a fairly elaborate setting or they purport to imply a heavy setting in play, right? And so you have a way of playing this where really all you're doing is, instead of preparing adventures, you are playing a rich landscape of troublemaking, trouble-fraught situations. And one thing I thought a lot about for 4th edition, particularly because you can think in units of a level up, right? So that gives you a number of encounters, gives you a number of, treasures to scatter around. It gives you some quantity to work with. So I say, all right, we're going from, they're 3rd level now. Here's a batch of shit, right? All right, I am going to sprinkle it over this cool map I have in front of me. Like, I feel like this village is going to be great. Village, you got the waterfall, and you got this other stuff here. Okay, great. I'm going to strew this stuff all around, and I'm going to have a ton of non-player characters and entities who care about it. And I don't know whom the player characters are going to like. I'm not going to make a big boss, right? They're all big bosses, if you want to look at it that way. I'm going to have them have conflicting things, right? These two are at war or something. Whatever you guys want to do, I don't know which of these are even going to turn into violent encounters. Some of them may turn into skill challenges. Some of them may be about allying with this person. Some of them might be trying to kill him. It depends on what you want. And then all I know is that we do this long enough, stuff in this situation is going to change. There will be consequences to this region. If I put in enough, you're going to encounter enough of it that will call it a level up. And if things are still going on, we'll keep going here. If you're done, we'll move on somewhere else.
Yeah, so it's sort of situational, sort of sandbox, almost like, I want to say Dungeon World fronts, almost, in that you create situations. And
the idea here is that you have a fraught and reactive and genuine, and I'm not playing it so that I take them through things. I'm playing because I like my characters. I like how awful they are, how great they are. I like how much they're going to fight for what they want. I like how much they're going to interact. I want to play this person. Maybe there's some of them we were sketchy and they blossom for me in play, just like your own player character may blossom for you in play. So with that in mind, and less of it, the term sandbox for me has always seemed a little odd because it presupposes certain things about video and digital play that don't apply in role playing. So I have a little trouble using that term, but I think I know what you mean, in that we're not talking about my linear chain. Okay, in the 2nd episode they'll go here, and then that'll give them the clue they need in the 4th episode to go here, right? I mean, so I agree with you. That's not the model at all. But 4th edition seems very nicely suited to it, with its quest mechanics, with the skill challenges as described in the 2nd Dungeon Master's Guide, which is where I think they get their their mechanics right. And the fact there's some really great text in there about how fights can morph into skill challenges and vice versa painlessly. You don't have to say, "Oh, well, I guess we're stuck in a skill challenge, so we can't have a fight." No, they can. I've had some fun times in play where in the Gamma World game, there was a character who was a crazy artist. It was a berserk robot, basically, who had this whole artistic thing going on that was all bad. And
artistic.
Right. And so there was this situation, but what I'm getting at is through the series of events of play, my character had already encountered artists who were crazy. The game master liked this motif a lot. So we had ended up encountering all of these sort of deranged artistic characters. And my character had had enough. He had a low intelligence. He kept failing out on every time he tried to engage with this stuff. And he'd had enough. And so he started insulting, just as dialogue, he started insulting the guy's art as they're busy desperately fighting him. And the game master says, aha, well, there is possibly here a skill challenge to make this character basically melt down.
Yeah.
Right. And so therefore, at the same time as we're dodging blasts and some of them are, shooting and whatever and doing all the combat stuff, some of us were taking standard actions just to lash the character with more mockery of the art. This is just pastiche, right? Make the skill roll and see, how the skill challenge was going at the same time. Of course, we're giving up attacks to do it. It's a risk.
Oh, yeah.
So that it's not you're not dodging the combat. You're actually doing something that's riskier rather than less risky.
Yeah.
So it was. But on the other hand, if you can knock them down with enough successes, if you were lucky enough to get enough successes, the character's head explodes, and no more points to worry about. So,
stage left.
Yeah. So it's so those are some of the things you can do with skill challenges to discover in play, not just prepare in your scenario. I like preparing potential skill challenges in scenarios or in setup, but to recognize that fights and skill challenges can emerge out of how you interact during play. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they aren't complicated to set up. So as you say,
the monster stat blocks in this game are among the most useful I have ever seen in any game. They're
genius.
Tremendous utility.
Yeah, you can pass them at the table, and they have everything that you need in the block. Mm-hmm. So you're not having to fiddle around very much. It's pretty much all there. And once you get used to them, you can pass them really quickly at the table. So it's
right. Yeah. So the feeling that I have is therefore that the game allows itself for the construction of, for lack of a better word, weird fantasy.
Yeah.
That you don't know where the story's going to go because it'll happen, right? This is what I call. My terminology is story now, right? You're not preparing the story. You, just as much as anyone else, the game master as much as anyone else, is simply putting in necessary raw material, and we all have necessary roles.
Yeah.
What happens, we'll find out. So if you're familiar with Apocalypse World, you'll recognize some of that language for sure. The situation with the situation too for me is now I get a little crazy with my whole thing about narrowing things down. I mean, you saw my prep, I think, for what I did.
I did. Really useful to see it.
Yeah. The idea was, for me, is grab a very few of, and this is if you're going to use the listed material. I'm not talking about making up new stuff, but even with the listed material, you take a few little things and say only these, races. We still haven't come up with a good word for that, and it's a bad word. We know that. But moving on, moving on from whenever someone solves that, let me know and I'll sign on to it. But for now, we're stuck. But the point is, a very few of those that work for the concept very few of the classes and decide what like hybrid multi-class you want to stick in there. And so far, I tend to honor the roles, right? So make sure, like in the barbaric psychedelic, you can be a controller, a leader, or a defender, and then you also had to hybridize with one of the two strikers. So everybody was a striker plus one of the others, so they're all there. I have no stake at all in the notion of, okay, we've got our whole spray of familiar options. We just got the whole spray. And I can't see that fantasy world in my head. There isn't a fantasy world. It's just D&D. Yeah. And so I can't do that. Aspects of it I can. I really like the idea. I think I mentioned this at the chat, was have only humans, half elves, and half orcs as player races. And orcs and elves would be treated only in their monster blocks in a very adverse, and they would be really like scary in this setting.
Yeah.
And go with something along the lines I was just talking about, with very fighter-ish, or at least martial options with some wizardry thrown in. And you think of that and you're like, okay, wait a minute, that actually sounds kind of cool, right? You've got some ethnic tensions, you've got some, the all of the interesting, the halvesies, the half humans throughout the history of role playing are an extraordinarily interesting topic, right? So you can hit that nail real hard, and so everybody would be, brandishing swords and daggers and, throwing around spells here and there, and it would be kind of fun. I could do that.
That would be really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sort of, because I'm new to it, and I wanted to make it sort of accessible to people who had been in it and maybe wanted to come back, as much as anyone. I mean, of my players, some are brand new, some are long-standing deep players. So I've gone Points of Light, I've gone the sort of standard setting.
Sure. Yeah.
I've gone polyglot. So it's like a melting pot.
Right.
I think 4th edition's a real melting pot. They've at least to my mind, I may not have got this completely right. Maybe I've just painted it this way in my mind, but they seem to have. Well, everything's about symmetry and balance, and I think there's, about the way the game is constructed, and so they seem to have, with perhaps some exceptions, taken out a lot of the animosity between the different ancestry kin race.
Right, quite a bit of them. 3rd edition, I think, may have taken the biggest step in that direction, as far as breaking with the older material. But 4th is kind of interesting in that it restores, it does what you said. But one thing about 3rd edition that I could say is that it's kind of anti-metal, right? It's smooth, right? The whole, all of this set, all the imaginative fantasy elements are pretty much not going to make anybody's mommy annoyed.
Yeah.
Whereas 4th, although without going too far with it, the illustrations are edgier. The sense of anything can happen is stronger, and it has a higher alcohol content, if you will, right? And so I think that there's something compelling about it. I remember my son, for example, he was looking across the different books, and he was kind of like, yeah, the Kuo-toa just look meaner in 4th edition. They just look meaner. Look at them, right? And so I guess my take here is only to say that I definitely see what you mean about playing the many points of light. That makes a lot of sense, as a matter of fact. But we've got, we all have a fairly long road ahead of us for playing nuances of this game. And there's more people involved than I think anyone realized. People who are willing to play for fun. Hey, let's play a little while. Okay. And it's not, in the modern sense, it's not, like I say, a marriage. It's something you can do for fun for a while with some people. And there's a lot to learn with this system that I think is, it's really, frankly, I felt in playing 3rd and 3.5, I didn't feel like I was learning anything. as a role player. Here, I feel like I do. I actually get better at aspects of play. You know, there's things I say, oh, I wasn't very good at that, or I could learn this. This is an interesting avenue I've never explored before, never thought to explore before. A friend of mine is saying something like, you know, I actually feel like playing a bard. You know, so there's different, you know, there's different benefits. So I'm really glad you're doing that. I'm sorry, I'm probably boring you with all this, but I'm really glad you're doing this.
It's really good. It's really good insights. And I suppose I made up the fourth. I just decided that there was going to be a fourth edition Renaissance. I mean, it's, and I just sort of said it a lot of times on the internet. And if you say something often enough on the internet, people go, "Hey, there's a fourth edition Renaissance." Now, I'm not saying that I'm instrumental in making that happen, but I was, again, as a bit of pure enthusiasm and not caring,
right?
Kind of in a sort of a nice. But not just, you know, I've got no axe to grind. Absolutely no axe to grind.
It's kind of hard not to, for a couple of reasons. One, even if you don't, people who feel, you know, people are going to interpret. Number one. And number two, the culture of D&D has become quite contentious, and not unlike the you know, 17th century European religious wars. And I think that I would, I think that, you know, saying 4E Renaissance is fun, and I agree with you. But as you say, out and proud is not a bad thing. That's what I may not see hostility in it, but I definitely see pride. It's like, look, you know.
Yeah, it's, I guess I've decided I put a few videos out, and you know, I've done things like confer. All I'm doing is to my mind expressing sort of the enthusiasm for it in a very sort of upfront and let's just make it out there kind of way. And actually, what I've discovered is, sure, I've had a few people. It's the internet.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't care. I can say the sky is blue.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know, you get a few, but you don't get. I haven't had many, and actually, predominantly, and I've made a very particular point in some of my stuff to sort of position the whole thing as not as you've got to be upfront and say it's not about additional wars. I'm not interested. Everyone has got their thing, and they're all good. They all produce fun at the table. All we're doing is celebrating one of them, and that's kind of all it is.
Well, one of the presentations that I put together a couple of years ago, and the videos are among my earliest videos, so, you know, please be forgiving if you ever look at one of them. As I say, I feel I watch them now and I look like, you know, the guy at the bus stop. But the idea is that I called them Finding D&D. And they are about Dungeons and Dragons basically as a folk religion, which is strong words. But the approach was to say, why are we supposed to care? Why are role players supposed to care? What is this fraught notion that, you know, that role playing itself, if nobody is publishing a version of D&D, just imagine that, for that nobody is actually actively publishing a version of Dungeons and Dragons. What's the impact on the hobby? Now, in my opinion, nothing. But in the opinion of everybody that I ever met, I mean, that would be shattering. It would be shattering, no matter what it is they play, right? Clearly the hobby has taken a blow. Clearly, you know, it's been undercut. And I also know there's been one of the benefits of the early days of the OSR was people actually doing some research on the origins of the game, often discovering things they were very surprised, because the ideology of D&D was not, it's just like going back and like researching Roman records and Egyptian records, you know, on the Bible, and you say, wait a minute, somebody made that shit up. Really?
Really?
You know, what a shock, right? And so it's so it's a little similar to that. But what I'm saying is that there was now much better understanding of these origins, and also that a lot of things were going on in 1974. The publication of D&D at Gen Con that year is one of the many, many, many things that were happening. And we cannot say that there was no role playing and then D&D hit the table at Gen Con and the light poured out of the box, right? And everybody knew, right? That's not what happened. So, but the idea is that I did this sequence called Finding D&D, where I found myself, my metaphor for institutional religions was frighteningly accurate to, like, it became, at first it was kind of like just an analogy, but then it became frighteningly accurate as I continued to think about it, and went and talked with, people who were in on it or who were involved, and they were like, oh my God, that's absolutely true. And I was like, it is? It is? You agree? And so I found, I don't want to, again, go into it in great detail, but what I found was that 4th edition ran into the problem of generational turnover. If you think about what were called editions of Dungeons and Dragons, the time between them was immense, right? If we go from 78-ish, the first player's handbook, the first advanced player's handbook in 78, you go all the way to 89 before you have a 2nd edition. And then from there, you go all the way to 2000 before having a 3rd. There's a lot of each one had its own, and never mind the sort of interesting intermediaries that we find, because that applies to them too. But you have a new group of adolescents each time, right? A very new group that could say, that one's mine. And to have a new edition come out scant moments after the 3rd in these terms is, especially after like 3.5 too. So the difference between 3.5 and 4 is what, like 3 years or something like that? 4? Yeah. That's insane for something that's not just an edition of a game. It's not a new Barbie, Hasbro. It's not a new Barbie. This is a culture. I think it was Ryan Dancy who said this isn't a game, it's a culture. Yeah. And as such, just that simple generational fact, you didn't have a new generation willing to adopt a D&D. That's one of the many factors, I think, that's involved. So, there's several, but that's definitely, to my mind, is one of them. And I do think that what I'm talking about with my reference to Finding D&D was my notion of, well, if you don't take a religious attitude, then what you have is a bunch of historical games that you can play. Yeah. Oh no. You mean I've just received a whole bunch of historical games that I can play? Is that bad? Isn't that good? Yeah. That's good, exactly. Right? That's a good thing. So why not be a hard agnostic and not give a shit about whether D&D is role playing or role playing is D&D? Not care and just play different games. And that's been a bit of a shock to a lot of people. There's some people who are like hardcore RPGA DMs who are kind of like blinking in the shock of this idea and are doing it. Now they're saying, I sat down and I said I've been playing BX all my life, and I just realized I haven't been playing BX. I opened the book again. Holy shit. I've been doing this thing that I've massaged into an existence for years.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'd forgotten my game, right? And so it's allowing people to just go in and relaxedly, play nicely, right? Play this game. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. And I kind of like that atmosphere at Adepts Play right now. A lot of different versions of D&D going on. That my history of D&D chart, kind of helps orient people.
Yeah, I suppose the thing I've learned is, and I guess my experience with 4th edition is a case in point. It's just, okay, I wasn't there between the published years, 2008, 2013. I was doing other things. I was playing other nice games, and I couldn't have told you anything about it. And it's been really fun, slightly time warping, but really fun to explore a game that's been and gone. It's not gone.
It kind of
but you
takes
never
a lot
know.
of pressure off, right?
Yeah, no pressure, and I get all the benefit of all the
Exactly.
learning,
Yeah.
all the learning that took place, all the monster maths or whatever it is, the bits and pieces that just tweaked it and made it sing that little bit better. Well, I just pick all that up now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I completely
I'm
agree.
good.
So I really hope that we can keep the interaction going, because I think you'd really enjoy some of the stuff people have been doing with it, um, that they put up at Adepts Play, and I would love to, have whatever contact maintained, so that whatever you're up to, more people can show up at it, right? More
Sounds great.
people can be involved. I have a grotesque number of views on my play videos, and I only put them up yesterday.
Okay.
And so that's
Look,
great. I mean, so
yeah,
hopefully people will go trotting over and say,
brilliant.
where's that, what's that con thing?
Well, I intend to run some more. I mean, so I kind of proved it.
Right.
Thought experiment. It can be done. It can be done. And I haven't. I deliberately said let's set a very near time frame. So
Right.
I don't want to set it like next year. Let's just pop one up
Absolutely.
for a couple of months and let's just play.
I
So we'll
completely
do that.
agree.
I'll do that.
I think that sounds like a great plan. So I will definitely find myself at them.
Right, lovely.
Yeah. Thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Ron.
Yeah. Take care.